Good morning, I'm Judge Anthony DeLuca. Throughout my 38 years on this bench, I thought I had seen every form of human frailty, every excuse, and every shadow of regret. But what unfolded in my courtroom on this particular Tuesday morning was something that didn't just challenge the law, it quietly shook the very soul of our democracy. Imagine, if you will, a person who doesn't just hold an office, but believes they are the office. A person who looks at the scales of justice and sees only a price tag. Today, we aren't just talking about a traffic violation or a minor lapse in judgment. We are talking about the moment a sitting mayor, a man who swore to serve his citizens, stood right where you are standing and told me with a straight face and a chilling calm, "Judge, you don't understand. I own this city. Wait until you hear what happened next." Because the silence that followed those words was the loudest thing I've ever heard in this chamber. It is the 24th of October, 2024. The air in Providence is crisp, but inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere is suffocating. The benches are packed, not with the usual morning crowd of nervous students or hard-working parents, but with cameras, high-priced investigators, and the heavy lingering scent of expensive cologne and political influence. The case on the docket, the city of Providence versus Mayor Daniel Whitmore. Now let me paint a picture for you. Mayor Whitmore isn't just a politician, he's a titan. For 12 years his face has been on every billboard, his name on every new bridge. He walks with a gait that suggests the ground beneath him should feel honored to be stepped upon. He's 64 years old, silver-haired, wearing a suit that costs more than what most of the people in this room earn in 6 months. But he's not here for a ribbon-cutting ceremony. He is here because on the night of September 12th at 1:15 a.m., Mayor Whitmore's black SUV was clocked doing 85 mph through a residential school zone, a 20 mph zone where children walk every single morning. He didn't just speed, he ignored 3 red lights, nearly striking a delivery van. And when he was finally boxed in by a patrol car, he didn't roll down his window to offer an apology. No, he rolled it down, blew cigar smoke into the face of a young officer, and handed over not his license, but his gold mayoral pin. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "This car doesn't stop for red lights. This car owns the road." As I sit here looking at him across this mahogany bench, I see something familiar yet deeply disturbing. It's a look I see in people who have forgotten what it feels like to be an ordinary citizen. In his eyes, I don't see a defendant. I see a man who thinks this trial is a theatrical performance, a minor annoyance he can simply resolve with a phone call. Power, my friends, is a dangerous drug. It can make a man blind to the very people he is supposed to protect. It can make him forget that the laws he signs into existence also apply to the hand that holds the pen. Today in this courtroom, we are going to find out if the title of mayor is a shield for corruption or if the law still has the teeth to bite those who think they are too big to fail. "Mr. Whitmore," I begin, my voice dropping to a register that commands the room's absolute focus. "You are charged with reckless endangerment, multiple counts of felony speeding, and most disturbingly, abuse of public office. How do you plead?" The mayor doesn't even stand up straight. He leans against the podium as if he's at a cocktail party, a smirk playing on his lips that says he knows something I don't. He looks at his lawyer, a man whose briefcase probably holds more secrets than the city archives, and then he looks at me. "Judge DeLuca," he says, his voice dripping with a condescension that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Let's not waste the taxpayers' time with these formalities. We both know how this ends. I've built this city, I've funded this court. In fact, I think it's time we had a real talk about who's really in charge here." The room goes cold. This isn't just a plea, this is a declaration of war against the very idea of justice. And as I take off my glasses and set them slowly on the desk, I realize this isn't just about a speeding ticket anymore. This is about the heart of our legal system. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when someone says something so outrageous that the brain struggles to process it. When Mayor Daniel Whitmore leaned back and uttered those words, "I own this city," the court reporter's fingers froze over the keys. The bailiff, a man who has seen 1,000 criminals, shifted his weight, his hand instinctively moving toward his belt. But I just sat there. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the weight of his arrogance hang in the air like a thick, toxic fog. "Mr. Whitmore," I say, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. "I want to make sure the record is perfectly clear. You are standing in a court of law under oath, And you are suggesting that your political status grants you ownership over the public roads, the safety of our children, and the very institutions meant to hold you accountable. Is that your official position? The mayor doesn't flinch. In fact, he laughs a short, dry bark of a laugh that carries no joy. He looks around the room as if searching for an audience to applaud his performance. Look at his posture. This is a man who has spent 12 years being the most powerful person in every room he enters. His chin is tilted upward, a classic sign of perceived superiority. He uses expansive gestures, claiming the space around the podium as if it were his private office. This is what we call the illusion of invulnerability. He has spent so long surrounded by yes-men that he has begun to believe his own myth. He doesn't see a judge. He sees a minor obstacle in his path to a re-election fundraiser. Judge DeLuca, let's be realistic, Whitmore replies, his tone shifting from condescending to outright aggressive. I've brought billions in development to this city. I've built the stadiums where your kids play. I've appointed the people who run the departments that keep this building standing. When I'm in a hurry, it's because the business of this city is in a hurry. That officer, that boy who pulled me over, he didn't understand the hierarchy. He thought he was doing his job. I was trying to save him from a very embarrassing career mistake. As he speaks, I'm watching more than just his mouth. I'm watching his hands. They are steady, but his eyes are darting toward the gallery, checking the reactions of the press. He's not talking to me anymore. He's talking to the cameras. He's attempting to frame his reckless behavior as a necessity of leadership. It's a classic tactic of the corrupt, rebranding a crime as a contribution. The hierarchy, I repeat, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. It's interesting you use that word, Mr. Whitmore, because in this courtroom there is only one hierarchy that matters, and it starts with the Constitution. It doesn't start with your donor list. I signal to the clerk to pull up the evidence from the night of the arrest. On the large monitors, the body camera footage of Officer Emily Carter begins to play. We see the black SUV tearing through the school zone. We hear the roar of the engine, a sound that signifies a total lack of regard for the lives that might have been crossing that street. Then the stop. We see the mayor's face through the window, illuminated by the red and blue strobes. He doesn't look like a leader. He looks like a man who is offended that the world hasn't moved out of his way. You're lucky I don't have you fired on the spot. We hear Whitmore's voice through the speakers, distorted but unmistakable. Roll back to your station and tell your captain that Daniel Whitmore is moving. Do it now, or you'll be walking a beat in the docks by Monday. The courtroom is dead silent now. The mayor's lawyer tries to whisper something in his ear, likely begging him to stop talking, but Whitmore brushes him off. He's addicted to his own voice. He's addicted to the feeling of being untouchable. Mr. Whitmore, I say, leaning forward so that my face is just inches from the microphone, that officer you threatened, she has a name, she has a family. And that night she was the only person in that school zone who was actually doing their job to protect this city. You claim to own this city, but you've clearly forgotten what it means to belong to it. You aren't its owner. You are its servant, or at least you were supposed to be. The mayor's smirk finally begins to falter. A small rhythmic twitch appears at the corner of his left eye, a micro-expression of rising anxiety. For the first time in a decade, someone is telling him no, and he has no idea how to handle it. Evidence and video footage are powerful, but they are often cold. To truly understand the gravity of Daniel Whitmore's arrogance, you have to look past the badge and the suit. You have to look at the people who don't have a voice in the City Hall corridors. As the mayor sat there smugly adjusted his silk tie, I decided it was time for him to meet someone. Mr. Whitmore, I say, leaning back, you've told us a lot about the bridges you've built and the stadiums you've funded, but you haven't said a word about the streets you've haunted. I'd like to introduce you to someone you didn't notice on the night of September 12th. I turn my gaze to the back of the courtroom. Mrs. Holloway, would you please step forward? A woman in her late 70s, leaning heavily on a wooden cane, slowly makes her way to the podium. Her hands are shaking, not from age, but from a deep, simmering trauma. This is Eleanor Holloway. She has lived in the same house in that school zone for 45 years. On the night the mayor decided he owned the road, Mrs. Holloway was walking her dog, a small terrier, near the crosswalk. Look at the contrast in this room. On one side, a man who thinks he is a god because he has a title. On the other, a woman who represents the very soul of the community he claims to serve. Whitmore doesn't even look at her. He checks his gold watch, exhaling an audible sigh of boredom. This, my friends, is the moral vacancy of power. He sees her as an inconvenience, a delay in his schedule. Mrs. Holloway, I say softly, tell the court what you saw that night. Her voice is thin, like parchment, but it carries a weight that silences every whisper in the gallery. I heard the engine first, she begins, her eyes fixed on the floor. It sounded like a jet taking off. I didn't think a car could move that fast on our street. I stepped back just as the black SUV screamed past. It was so close the wind nearly knocked me over. My dog Barnaby, he was so scared he ran into the bushes and hasn't been the same since. But it wasn't just the speed, Judge. It was the fact that the driver didn't even tap the brakes, not at the stop sign, not at the red light. It was as if we didn't exist. She finally looks up, and for the first time she looks directly at the mayor. I voted for you 3 times. Mr. Whitmore, I believed you when you said you cared about our safety. But that night I realized I wasn't a citizen to you. I was just an obstacle. The mayor's reaction is chilling. He doesn't offer a look of sympathy. He doesn't even offer a fake political apology. Instead, he leans toward his lawyer and whispers loud enough for the front row to hear. Is this really necessary? We're litigating a dog being scared now. The courtroom gasps. I feel a heat rising in my chest, a slow burning anger that I've learned to harness over 4 decades. This is the turning point. This is where the mayor's arrogance crosses the line from annoying to dangerous. He has, completely disconnected from the humanity of his constituents. I look at Mrs. Holloway, then at the mayor. Mr. Whitmore, you asked if this is necessary. Let me answer that for you. It is the most necessary thing happening in this city today. Because while you were busy owning the city, Mrs. Holloway was busy surviving your ego. You claim the hierarchy protects you, but you forget that the top of the hierarchy is built on the shoulders of people like Eleanor Holloway. If they move, you fall. As Mrs. Holloway slowly walks back to her seat, the mayor's lawyer finally looks worried. He's realized what Whitmore hasn't. The court of public opinion in this room has already reached a verdict, but we aren't done. Not even close, because the mayor is about to make a move that will seal his fate forever. If you ever want to see the true face of a man, don't look at him when he's winning. Look at him when he's cornered. As the testimony of Mrs. Holloway finished, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from tense to volatile. Mayor Daniel Whitmore, realizing that his "I own this city" speech had failed to intimidate the bench, decided to pivot to the only other language he spoke fluently, the language of the backdoor deal. He didn't just stand there. He walked toward my bench, ignoring the baif's warning. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that he thought was private. "Judge DeLuca," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile that looked more like a snarl. "Let's be adults here. We both know how the world works. You have a pension to think about. This city has projects that need my signature. Why don't we just call this a misunderstanding due to stress? I'm prepared to make a significant donation to any educational fund of your choosing. Let's resolve this civilly and forget this rookie officer ever made a mistake. Do you hear that? That is the sound of a man who believes every person has a price. He wasn't just offering a donation. He was attempting to bribe a judge of the municipal court in broad daylight surrounded by cameras. This is the ego trap. He is so confident in his power that he thinks he can buy his way out of a reckless endangerment charge. He thinks the law is a vending machine where you insert money and get the result you want. I looked at him and I felt a profound sense of sadness, not for him, but for the city that had trusted this man for 12 years. I didn't interrupt him. I let him finish. I let him dig a hole so deep that no political connection could ever pull him out. "Mr. Whitmore," I say, my voice now carrying a cold metallic edge, "are you suggesting that this court should ignore the evidence of a crime in exchange for a donation?" He winked. He actually winked at me. "I'm suggesting that leaders take care of each other, Judge. That's how we keep the wheels turning." "I see," I reply. I put my glasses back on and looked directly at the court reporter. "Madam Clerk, I hope you captured every syllable of that last statement because Mr. Whitmore has just graduated from a speeding violation to an attempted judicial bribery, a third-degree felony." The color drained from the mayor's face so fast it was as if someone had pulled a plug. The smirk vanished. His lawyer, a man who had been paid millions to protect this ego, literally put his head in his hands. He knew that in those 30 seconds, Daniel Whitmore hadn't just lost the case, he had destroyed his life. Mr. Whitmore, I continue, you've spent your career thinking that the wheels of this city are greased by favors, but you forgot one thing. The law isn't a wheel. It's an anchor. And right now, it's tied firmly around your neck. I turned to the belief. Officer, please ensure the video from the bench microphone is secured and backed up. We are no longer just looking at a traffic ticket. We are looking at a pattern of systemic corruption. Look at him now. The mayor who owns the city is suddenly looking very small. He's fumbling with his silk tie. His eyes are darting toward the exit. He's realizing that the hierarchy he bragged about doesn't exist inside these four walls. In here, he is just a man who tried to corrupt the one thing that must remain pure, justice. But wait, because the most shocking part is yet to come. The mayor isn't the only one with secrets in this room. And I have one more document in my folder that is about to turn this misunderstanding into a national scandal. You see, in a courtroom, there is a moment where the defendant realizes that the exits are no longer just doors. They are the boundaries of their freedom. As Mayor Daniel Whitmore sat there sweating through his $3,000 silk shirt, he thought his only problem was a bribery charge and a speeding ticket. He thought if he could just survive this morning, his friends in the governor's office or his donors could clean up the mess. But he didn't know that I'd been handed a folder by the city auditor just 10 minutes before I walked onto this bench. Mr. Whitmore, I say, and the room falls so silent you could hear a heartbeat. You've spent the last hour telling this court that you own this city because you built the bridges and the stadiums. You used your contributions as a shield for your recklessness, but I have a report here. Let's call it the Whitmore Legacy File that tells a very different story about how those projects were funded. I open the blue folder. Whitmore's lawyer tries to stand up, to object, to stop the bleeding, but I wave him down. This is the structural collapse. This is the moment the hierarchy he bragged about becomes the very weight that crushes him. According to these audits, I continue, my voice echoing off the marble walls, the donations you mentioned to resolve this case, they aren't coming from your personal bank account, are they? They are coming from a discretionary fund meant for school lunches and public park maintenance. In fact, over the last 3 years, while you were speeding through school zones, you were also siphoning millions from the very department that ensures the safety of those schools. Look at his face now. The arrogance has completely evaporated. His skin has turned a sickly shade of gray. This is physiognomy in its purest form. The mask of the great leader has slipped to reveal the petty thief underneath. His eyes are no longer darting. They are fixed on that blue folder as if it were a loaded weapon, because it is. It is the evidence that his ownership of the city was actually a theft from its citizens. You didn't build those stadiums to help the children, Mr. Whitmore, I say, leaning in, my eyes locking onto his. You built them because the construction contracts were awarded to companies you hold private shares in. You didn't own the city. You were just renting its soul and charging the taxpayers for the privilege. This is the moral outrage that our audience feels. For my friends watching at home, especially those of you who have worked 40 years for a pension, who have paid your taxes and played by the rules, this is the ego trap. A man who stands on a pedestal of lies looking down on a woman like Mrs. Holloway while his hands are deep in her pockets. It's not just illegal, it's despicable. The mayor tries to speak. He opens his mouth, but only a dry, raspy sound comes out. No, I own this city. No. Do you know who I am? Just the silence of a man who has run out of road. I am officially referring these documents to the State Attorney General and the FBI. I announce. But before we get to the corruption trial that will surely follow, we still have a matter of public safety and a gross abuse of power in this court to resolve. And Mr. Whitmore, I can promise you one thing. The city you claim to own is about to evict you.